Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
This episode of the Kindness Project was recorded live on Facebook during lockdown, which explains why we're probably still talking about being stuck indoors. I hope you're enjoying your time outside to the fullest, and thanks for listening to the Kindness Project. This week on the Kindness Project, we talk about podcast charts, accents, and we are joined by Adrian Wright.
Hey dudes. Good morning. Welcome to the Kindness Project. I'm joined by a girl who is comedic. Oh, we're on live, are we?
We are live.
There's got to be a better way of doing that.
Testing our volume.
I am joined by a girl who is both comedic and philosophical. It's Charlotte Dames.
And I'm joined by a man who thinks... I'm just going to make a mention about the top 50, and then I realised that my sentence wasn't grammatically correct.
What sentence were you going to have that was lit?
I was going to say... I don't know, it's gone.
All right.
I was going to say something about the top 50 and 200 about comedy and philosophy.
All right. And did I steal your thunder there, talking about comedic and being comedic and philosophical?
I can rewrite it because you said it already.
Welcome to the Kindness Project Live. If you're watching on the live stream, thank you. Yes. If you're
three people watching
for the three.
I think one of those might be us.
That are watching live, thank you. For the a few more audio listeners, thanks for continuing to listen. We really appreciate it. And I just want to thank our comedic and philosophical guest today. It's Adrian. How are you, mate?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
No, you're more than welcome. I really appreciate you coming on. So, we might as well do our parish notices and stuff we need to talk about first. The reason our introductions were about comedy and philosophy is because we have popped up in the Apple Podcasts philosophy and comedy charts, and we were talking earlier before we started recording that if there was a comedy philosophy podcast chart, maybe we'd be alright. What place would we get?
You probably have to contend with some fiction podcasts, some talk shows with comedians.
I mean, I tell you where I want to be. We did get Spotify's 17th happiest podcast in the world. So if we could get, 16th?
15th.
Is that too ambitious? 14th?
Top 15.
Yeah, top 10.
Top 10.
Top 10, we'd want that. So thank you for everybody for getting involved, watching and listening to the show. That is our brand of, apparently, comedy philosophy. That's what we're going for. And thank you to the guys at kindness.org. It's an organisation based in New York who sent me a lovely email about the podcast yesterday. They're going to be guests on the podcast coming up. Hopefully we can have them live, but I don't know how the time difference is going to work with New York.
Still.
Good work.
Bada bing.
So yeah, we're bada bing. A very New York here. Bada bing, bada boom. Forget about it.
That wasn't my intention at all.
You know what? We shouldn't try accents.
You shouldn't try accents. I don't try accents.
Adrian, are you any good at accents?
Absolutely not. You're not bringing me into that.
See, I'm not the only one who refuses to do it.
See, I think my brother is not too bad actually, but that's the only one that I'm going to do. And I want to just understand a little bit about. So, sorry, one unofficial question of the podcast. We'll get on to question of the podcast in a minute, but one unofficial question of the podcast is, can you do accents? And if so, what's your favourite accent? Now, what I might do is make that an official question of the podcast in the future and get people to send us audio files of them doing accents. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
There was a point in time where I could do several different Pokemon, and it was the most embarrassing thing.
Give it a go.
No.
What Pokemon can you do?
I can't do accents, but
Go on, give it a go.
I'm very tired this morning. Anyway, the typical Pikachu one.
Go on then.
Oh my god. Okay. He's going me. Okay. It's not very good.
Give it a go.
I shouldn't have mentioned anything.
So that sounds nothing like Pikachu. Oh, I shouldn't have mentioned anything. That doesn't sound like Pikachu.
It's not the coronavirus, don't worry.
Go on.
Anyway.
Adrian, are you ready?
Yeah, no, I'm stalling as long as possible.
Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this Pikachu impression? I will wait all day, literally.
Absolutely.
It's not good. Why don't you give it a go and then I'll follow after you?
Pikachu. There we go. That's my one. We'll do one.
Pika! Ow, that hurt.
I've never heard Pikachu go Pika. That hurt. I've never heard that. Anyway, unofficial question of the podcast is what accents can you do? Official question of the podcast is what's your favourite GIF or emoji? And do you want to tell our audience where they can speak to us?
Okay, so if you're currently watching this, you are on our Facebook page. Welcome, you guys. But if you're not, our Facebook page can be found if you just type the Kindness Project podcast into the top bar, and it should be the first one that pops up. On Twitter, we are at Ola Kindness. You haven't said any objections to that in a while, and I'm wondering why, and it makes me a little bit like, is he going to object one of these days? And like, no, he's just given up trying.
Carry on.
So on Instagram, we're also at Ola Kindness. Our email is ola@kindnessproject.co.uk.
That's Ola with an H, H-O-L-A, just so you know.
And then if you just put the Kindness Project podcast into the search bar of Google.
Yeah.
Sorry. You keep giving me elbow nudges like, go on, keep going, mate.
I'm waiting for your Pikachu impression again. Or you can get us on www.thekindnessproject.co.uk. All of our previous 100-odd episodes are there. With some amazing guests doing fantastic work in the world. Hi to Barry, morning to Barry, morning to Jess, morning to Dave, morning to Andy, and morning to Andrew. Really appreciate you watching the show.
Especially considering we're an hour later than we usually are.
We are a bit later than we normally are, so thanks for tuning in live. We appreciate it.
Yes.
So the question is, what is your favourite GIF or emoji? Feel free to post on the live page. Adrian, what's your favourite GIF or emoji?
It's funny because I often sign off with the standard sort of little smiley face and a kiss, which is a bit odd because you have to be aware that's not really an appropriate way when you're communicating with some business people to wrap up with a smiley face and a kiss, and that happens occasionally.
Quick question, why not?
That's it. Why not?
Yeah.
But actually, the one I really like is, there's the little round yellow face, obviously, and just the two little eyes. I think that's quite a more cryptic one, so I use that occasionally. I'm not sure why, but I just like to look at that little him or her.
Yeah, you know what? I think emojis are there to confuse a bit. Do you know what I mean? I've had messages with emojis, and you go, why is it a purple heart, or why is it why have they used?
I always use the green ones.
Yeah. You know what I'm disappointed about? I've never had a message from Adrian or an email with a kiss and a love heart. I'm disappointed, mate.
I don't use it at all, but
I'll make up for it with the next one.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
I don't use it at all, but there's this very entertaining gif of Spider-Man dancing, and if you listen to it, any song you listen to it to, it dances to the beat, and it's great.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. I'll have to give that a go. My favourite, and this is the one I use the most, is the laughing emoji. Okay, but I still don't know the difference, and maybe you can educate me on that. With the laughing emoji where the face is straight compared to the slightly tilted laughing emoji.
This is laughing.
Yeah.
This is laughing so much you're falling over.
Ah, right. Is that
I
waffle?
assume.
Is that lull and that's ruffle?
I
Is
assume
it?
so.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. And I think my favourite GIF is definitely Fresh Prince of Bel-Air related. It's only doing the dance. You know, it's not unusual dance.
It's not unusual.
Yeah, that one. What's yours? What's your favourite gift?
The favourite gift that I sent
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, because it's so funny.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there listening to a song. It could be a really slow song. He still somehow manages to dance to the beat.
Fair enough.
It's great.
Yeah.
But also I like the really like. I usually just type into the search bar what I'm thinking, and it comes up with loads of these like sassy responses, and I just kind of go, although the word I put in isn't sassy, it's like.
Yeah, it's always a sassy gif. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so we'll look forward to your answers on that. Just want to cover off. Thank you to Mr. Dave Forsdyke, who never lets us down with cheering his silver linings, and we've got a few more today. Over the last few weeks, my wife has been waking up early and telling me how loud and beautiful the dawn chorus is, and that's something I've noticed. Like literally, nature has seemed to
Come alive with the sounds of music.
And I don't know about you, but definitely an increased prominence in my life. Like when I'm going out for my runs, I'm sort of just contemplating nature more. Adrian, are you feeling that as well?
Absolutely. It's such a funny time, isn't it? Because we were all talking about the stress and the challenge and difficulty, which is understandable. It's not a pleasant time to be in at the moment, but there are little things like that we're all noticing, and we really need to keep hold of somehow. So it's going to be interesting with the economic bounce back. Of course, we want that for people's livelihoods, but how can we balance that with this appreciation for nature, which seems to be skyrocketing?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, again, we can talk about this a little bit later on, but maybe more of a focus on changing the way we travel. Because certainly I think... Do you want to take your hoodie off live on the podcast?
Yeah,
cool, all good. But changing the way we travel might be one of those issues, and certainly one of the things that I'm encouraged about is... And again, I know it's not practical for everybody, but people cycling, walking and running more, as opposed to taking their car unnecessarily. I think that would be an interesting change. One other thing is Food Cycle is a charity that turns surplus food from supermarkets and grocery stores into healthy meals and hosts community dinners for the hungry and the lonely. They adapted to the lockdown and now deliver food parcels to those in need. Amazing work. Well done, Food Cycle. We'll put a link to the work you're doing on the show notes. And thanks to Dave for mentioning that. Quick shout out to Sharon, who in our local community, Sharon Adkins, who in our local community is doing some amazing work like that. And certainly Cassie and I are going to be contributing to the amazing work you do over the next couple of weeks. And the changes in lockdown restrictions mean we can go out and exercise more. Gyms are still closed, but one gym owner in Illinois has let members take equipment home for free. Drew Whitted, owner of the Be Strong Gym, said if our members can't come in, we want to take it home and keep training. Now, interestingly, my gym, Squad Fitness in Hornchurch, has been doing that. They've been giving out kettlebells. I had my own kettlebells, so I didn't need to worry about that. The weird thing is, for me, I didn't realise how loud I was when I was training out in the back garden.
Yeah.
And on VE Day, we had a sort of socially isolated street party, and everybody's now calling me Joe Wicks because apparently I make some weird noises as I'm exercising in the garden. But yeah, certainly. How are you keeping fit and healthy during lockdown, Adrian?
Well, I must confess, I work out a bit like an OAP, to be honest. Lockdown or no lockdown, it is sort of walking and cycling for me. Actually, I haven't said that. I did join the gym a while back, and I have been going for a while, but I'm not a great fan, so I think I'll probably do a year to work on the belly, and then back to just walking and cycling. Sort of mild and often is my approach.
Yeah, you know what? It's really interesting. I mean, there's a couple of things there. Firstly, you say you cycle like an OAP, and you can't do that without a basket on your bike. So have you got one of those?
I've got 2.
Amazing. And actually, there's loads of research that talks about the benefits of moderate exercise. So one of the bits of research, and there's an amazing book on it, and I'll put a link on the show notes, talks about places in the world that are blue zones. Have you ever heard of that phrase? Have I ever talked to you about that before?
No, never.
Adrian, do you know what a blue zone is?
Blue zone?
Yeah, clearly not. I lingered too long there. He didn't know, and I don't know what I was waiting for an answer. But blue zones are parts of the world where people live a lot longer and healthier than average. And there's these tiny little places where people do this. One of them is a small island off Japan. One of them's a small island off Greece. There's a place in Canada where they do that. And interestingly, these blue zones there's been research into it, and they've got some common themes. And one of those themes has been moderate exercise for longer. So making sure that, and along with a plant-based diet and strong community links and all of the stuff we know is good for us. But I'll put a link to the amazing, it's one we share with our clients from a business, because as they approach retirement, it's good to live longer, healthier lives. So I'll get something over on that, Adrian. It might be an interesting read for you.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned that, I went through a little phase about a year ago of reading up on Ikigai, the Japanese philosophy for a long life. And yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it's little and often. And I realised I may have offended some OAP listeners. I'm sure there's many out there that are probably actually far fitter than I am, to be honest.
I wouldn't worry about offending anybody, mate. We do that pretty well on our own, so apologies to any OAPs who are super fit. You know what, I remember doing a 10k once a few years ago when I was a little less fit, and there was this guy who was in front of me who was 72. How did I know? He had it on his shirt. I'm 72 and still running, still can beat him. I was like, he was super fit, so I agree.
You once got outrun by someone dressed as the Mona Lisa.
I did.
Yeah.
Paris Marathon 3 years ago. There was
You did almost get beat up by a baguette, though.
There was a fella with an Eiffel Tower on his head who beat my time. A fella dressed up as a Mona Lisa who beat my time, and a bloke in a tutu. So that's embarrassing. On that note, should we ask Adrian some questions? That'd be good, wouldn't it?
You know, it's just my job as your child to embarrass you. It
is. I mean, what you haven't done today is do too many cynical eye rolls, which I'm a bit disappointed about.
You just haven't been looking enough, mate.
I need to be cheesier, clearly. Adrian, thank you for coming on and being our guest. We know that you're an expert in mindfulness, and one of the things that we try and talk about on the podcast, as well as sharing stories of people doing amazing stuff in the world, is how to be a bit kinder to ourselves. And certainly I see mindfulness as a part of that. So thanks for coming on and sharing your expertise with our audience. Before we start talking about how you can help people, tell us a little bit about you.
Right, so I was thinking we might do a practice, Chris, but should we do that at the end, do you reckon?
When would you like to do it, mate? It's entirely your choice.
I'm kind of feeling now, if you and Charlotte are happy to go with that.
All good?
Yeah, let's do it.
All good, brilliant. Right, so it'll only be a few minutes, but I'll just guide yourselves and anyone else that's listening and anyone that tunes in later through a very quick practice, just a few minutes. I am going to use what's called a singing bowl to start and finish the practice. So you often have this sound at the beginning and end of a practice, and there are different reasons for using a sound at the beginning and the end of a meditation. And the one that I most frequently share is it really is a point, it's saying this is a point now where I'm just going to tune in to myself and my own experience. So rather than the worrying about the Adrian that has to be a husband and a dad and an employer and etc. etc. Actually, this is now just a few minutes where I'm just going to be with me. That's it. Nothing else. And then we ring the bell again, and then that's a point to come out and engage with life. So having a listen to this sound and just sitting comfortably, maybe with the eyes closed, if you're comfortable to close the eyes, or otherwise a soft gaze down towards the table or the floor.
This is why one of us needs to keep our eyes open.
Okay, so taking a moment to check in with your body. Mindfulness is often linked to the mind and mental health and what have you. But actually most practices, we really tune into the body rather than the mind. So noticing if any parts of the body are holding on to any tension or tightness and letting those go. And taking one or two slightly deeper, fuller breaths. Noticing if with the focus on the breath, the body's let go of any tightness. And during the periods of silence, the mind will want to create a little commentary or have a little chatter, perhaps jump into the past or the future. So we give the mind something to focus on, something to become aware of. So just taking a moment to notice the feet and the contact between the feet and the floor. And expanding that to include the contact between the body and the chair. Having a sense of being grounded here. The mind can flit off into yesterday or tomorrow. The body has to be here. And moving the awareness up the body into the trunk of the body, noticing the stomach or the chest, perhaps noticing how the body is very gradually moving, each in-breath and each out-breath. Be able to notice how there's a very slight pause at the end of each in-breath and at the end of each out-breath. And presently expanding that awareness, become aware of the whole body sitting here, breathing in and breathing out. And noticing the edges of the body, noticing the space around the body. Becoming aware of the sounds in the room. listening to this sound, and this sound being an invitation to move from this internal focus to an external one. Okay. And that's it.
That was really good. That felt quite relaxing, actually. That was really good. I'm on for a nap now, so I'm going to let Charlotte finish the rest of the show. But yeah, that was a good that was a good example of how actually just finding some space in the day just to sort of contemplate and stay silent is super important, right?
Well, that's it, absolutely. I mean, that was 5 minutes, and there's a practice that's 3 minutes long, and just taking those little moments to check out. We're so continuously switched on. I mean, even in lockdown, with the technology, we can be continuously switched on, which is great. I mean, you know, I'm not anti-technology, and it's brilliant that you can connect up with people. It's wonderful that older people are getting more au fait with their tablets and laptops and what have you. Again, probably more au fait than I am, and they're able to communicate with family still and family across the globe. So that connection is brilliant, but we also have to be aware that being continuously switched on can be a bit exhausting. So just sort of switch out of that occasionally and just notice yourself breathing and being can be a useful tool to have.
It's interesting because I've had a couple of conversations about this over the last couple of days. Because I get, and again, when we spoke to Nick Elston, who was on the podcast talking about anxiety, stress and mental health, one of the things we spoke to him about was how you need to take a break from the technology, and certainly a couple of people I've spoken to over the last few days have been getting a bit zoomed out because they're spending so much time on it. So taking that time away from the technology, I think, is important as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a tip recently, which was every 20 minutes, take your eyes off the screen and look into the distance. I mean, it may not be that distant if you're in a room, but take the gaze away from the screen a bit, focus in the distance for a little while, which will just give your eyes a bit of a rest from that close focus. Or, of course, as we've just done, you could shut your eyes, could be just for 10, 15 seconds. So, it's interesting, communicating through a screen is, although you're physically distant, it's actually quite intense in a way. You really are engaged with, whether it's a group or an individual, it's a level of attention that's very, very intense. So it's no wonder that it is quite exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're talking about this stuff, help our listeners and us understand a little bit more about you.
So I am 48 years of age, and I have an adult son, which I'm still sort of recovering from. He turned 18 a few months ago, and I'm still in disbelief. My son is an adult. And so I've got Oliver, 18, and Emily, 16, and then Hayden, the baby of the family, but I don't think he'd be happy with that title. He's 12. Okay. And married for, let's get this right or I'll be in trouble. Married for 19 years, and for that time, Nikki, my wife, has had me on what she calls the husband training program. I thought I was quite near the end of this program, but she reliably informs me there's still some way to go.
Yeah, I've quit that program because I was never going to pass. Just to get you in more trouble, Adrian. How many months and days have you been married? I'm joking. Don't answer that because the right response is to ask me, and I don't know either. And
the right response is to say something sappy like "not long enough" or
and that's why I failed the husband training program, because I clearly I haven't got answers. How long have I been married? Not long enough. Tell us. Sorry, when you're 19 years into the husband training program, what do you learn?
Well, it's the main emphasis is actually on DIY and gardening.
That's never happening.
That's why I failed. That's definitely why I failed.
That's it. It's apparently the way to a man's heart is through his stomach and cooking, and I think the way to a woman's heart is definitely by putting up a decent shelf and painting a decent room. So yeah, I'm getting better, but there's still room for improvement.
But I'm just looking at Gass's face, who's on the edge of the room, and yeah, I've definitely failed the husband training program. Now what I wanted to do is talk to you, and thanks for that amazing example of mindfulness in action. But talk to me about some of the work you do both with individuals and in organisations.
So I've been practising mindfulness for 11 years and training people for just over 6, and that started in the education sector. So I'm an ex-teacher and still do a little bit of teaching part-time. So initially it was bringing mindfulness into schools and colleges, the students and the teachers, working with their stress and anxiety levels. I've also talked with the NHS to our wonderful NHS workers, so that's helping them to again manage their stress, anxiety levels. It's also very much around self-compassion, because people that are in those types of jobs can often suffer from what's called compassion fatigue, where you're continuously giving all the time, which is also a nice thing to do, but it can lead to burnout when you're all the time giving love and care, and perhaps not making sure that you're giving enough to yourself. And then more recently, in the last few years, I've been working in the workplace as well. So companies, working with individuals one-to-one, but also small teams in companies.
Yeah, and I suppose the point you make about caregivers is right, isn't it? You know, there needs to be an element of focus on being kind to yourself, so you can be increasingly kind to others.
Yeah, absolutely. When people often ask to put mindfulness in a nutshell, I think it's around, for starters, the practice is important, but the practice isn't an end in itself, it's just a means, really, it's just a path. So really, true mindfulness is around, well, what decisions can I make in my life that are the right decisions for me, but also the right decisions for those around me? And that's an easy thing to say, but it's actually a really difficult balance to strike, because at times perhaps you may have to do something that's more for yourself, and perhaps it's not great for those around you, but you do need times to look after number one, and then other times it might be more important to put yourself second or third and give to others. So the balance between those two things is it's quite a tricky thing to get right, and mindfulness doesn't have a right answer for that, but it can help you to notice that and to work towards balance between those two things.
Yeah, I think balance is the catchword there, isn't it? You know, making sure that you're conscious that you need to maintain that balance. Help me understand how you found mindfulness, and how did you discover the power of it?
So 11 years ago, I had what's commonly called a nervous breakdown, but really in the psychiatric profession, they don't tend to use that phrase. So the medical term was a depressive collapse with elements of psychosis. So I was quite ill. I was on 3 lots of medication, and as I was getting better, before I returned to the workplace, I had an occupational therapist. That's the last stage of your recovery, if you like. Who was an absolutely wonderful person, one of those people that was just beyond their job role, and she gave me a CD of meditation. So I started practicing that. Started doing a little bit of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, a little bit of that, and a little bit of yoga, and recovered, and then returned to the workplace. And interestingly, I had a follow-up meeting with my psychiatrist, and he said, Adrian, what was interesting about with your recovery is you felt very ill when you got better, but it was very much in a straight line. You didn't relapse as you got better. And usually with mental ill health, there are relapses on the way to recovering. And at the time, I didn't really link that to mindfulness. I thought that was interesting, but I didn't necessarily link it to that more than the medication or anything else I was doing. And then I heard about Professor Williams' work a couple of years after that. He works in the NHS delivering what's called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and his particular focus was, let's use mindfulness to get people well alongside medication, but then also to keep them well. So medication's great and it's very useful, but where's the tools and the mechanism for staying healthy afterwards?
Yeah.
So it was interesting actually, that was my experience, even though I wasn't on that program officially. That was my experience with mindfulness, and then as I carried on practicing and staying well, I noticed all these other benefits. So it wasn't just around stress and anxiety reduction, but I noticed I was calmer at work with colleagues, more able to listen to people more fully, less snappy with my children. So all these other little sort of benefits came along as you carry on practicing through the months and years.
It's the mental health thing is interesting, isn't it? Because Charlotte and I actually a couple of years ago now went to the Hay Literary Festival, and we saw a guy talk called Joe Hanahari was his name, something like that.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called Lost Horizons, talking about how sometimes the medical profession's go-to when it comes to mental health is have a pill, when actually the pharmaceutical ways of managing our own mental health, which thankfully we can talk a bit more openly about now, as opposed to suffer in silence, is the way to go. And I think mindfulness certainly plays a part in that, right?
Oh, massively. It's fascinating watching the national conversation around mental health over certainly over the last 11 years since I fell ill, but also there was mental ill health in my family as well, so I've been around it, if you like, all my life. So really observing the changes we've had through the decades as a nation, and it's wonderful that we're having more open conversations about it now, but also I think we also need a more, what the right word is, I want to say complex conversation, but that's not really the right word, but certainly inviting different angles. And I think one issue perhaps with talking about mental health and mental ill health is that's very much a dichotomy splitting between two. Well, either I feel well or I feel ill.
Yeah.
And actually in life really it's more of a spectrum between those two. It's very rare that people are 100% really well all of the time in life, and likewise it's still fairly rare that people fall really ill and need hospitalisation and what have you. So we all live our lives sort of wandering up and down this spectrum, and while medication will absolutely be useful when people have what's called an acute episode, perhaps something very dramatic has happened in their life and they'll need that medication at that point. But looking at other ways to keep yourself healthy is really, really important. People would say, there's often this analogy with mental ill health, when, well, if you broke your leg, then you would put it in plaster, so for ill with depression, then have antidepressants. And absolutely that's right in many ways. But then again, if you kept breaking your leg, you wouldn't keep going back to the doctor saying, oh, I've done it again, right back into plaster, right back into plaster. There would come a point where you would say, well, okay, why do I keep breaking my leg? Yes, I can go to the doctors and keep putting it in plaster, but perhaps I need to step back a bit and look at what's going on. Why am I injuring myself in this way? And the same with mental ill health. Absolutely use the support of our wonderful NHS and the medications and what have you. But if that's happening continuously, I think that I had a wonderful phrase recently, which was, there's meaning in suffering. There's meaning in suffering. So if you're finding yourself continuously dipping into low mood, perhaps there's something to reflect on there, something to notice, and may be something in your life that you do need to look to work with and change. So all of these, there's no right or wrong, but all of these things we need to bring into the dialogue and the discussion we're having.
But certainly the conversation needs to be more nuanced, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we are. Charlotte, did you have a question?
Yeah. So why do you think that workplaces are good environments to practice?
I think it is. I think all environments are good. I mean, certainly the home and the schools, hospital. There's many environments. What's interesting when you go into the workplace and work with teams is that very often the way you communicate in a mindfulness group will be very different to any other form of communication. So we had a little 5-minute practice, and when you do that in the workplace and then you come out of that and you carry on discussing the practice and perhaps do some other little activities with your colleagues, it puts the team in a very different place. And it's not, once you work in the workplace in that sort of environment, it's not therapy, so it's not that people are necessarily sharing lots about themselves and their personal life and what have you, but it is certainly a different way of communicating. So when I go in and work in the workplace, I don't tend to go in with PowerPoints and lots of the sort of usual training tools. It's still often very much sitting in a circle, discussing things, talking about what we might be finding difficult in our lives, and then communicating with colleagues in a very different way, isn't just through email or through through the phone, what have you. It's a very deeper sort of way of connecting, and I've noticed that so much that I've now actually created another program that's not just around mindfulness and well-being, but it's mindfulness and communication. So how it affects the way we communicate with one another.
So during this current time, how can mindfulness support positive mental health?
I think it is that, what I mentioned earlier, lots of little practices. So you may have noticed there are some articles in the press now critical of... It's funny, I lead a group on a Monday evening. People that have been in my courses can sort of drop into this little group, this little half-hour group we do. And one of the participants does have 2 pet dogs, and she says every time we practice, even if they're quite lively before the practice, during the practice they're just completely calm and usually then lay down and fall asleep.
So they're getting involved as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, going back to practicing during this time, little and often, I would say, especially if you haven't practiced before. So there have been some articles recently that have been critical of mindfulness, and in many ways quite rightly so, because when I read the detail of these criticisms, it's often people that are under high levels of stress, and then a mindfulness trainer has taken them on a program where they'll be practicing meditations for 30-40 minutes, may even go off and do a retreat and have long periods of silence. And if you're in a very challenging place with high stress and anxiety levels, you've got to immediately jump to long practices. It's a little bit like saying, I want to get healthier, I fancy running. Oh look, there's a marathon in a month's time.
It's step by step, isn't it? Yeah.
So yeah, if you're starting out on the practice, you're finding yourself stressed at this time, then you live them off. Start with really short practices. And
Can I ask a question? And this is just from my understanding, and this was over the last couple of years that I've understood a little bit more about mindfulness. But mindfulness to me, I think, and again, I'm probably not alone in having this perception of it, was seen as a more spiritual thing that perhaps I wouldn't have engaged with a couple of years ago. And I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who works within my business who actually changed my mind about that, and said that it's not actually spiritual. It's something a bit different. And certainly, what were your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. Let's think. A couple of things to say. So first of all, something that I don't share too widely is that I do a lot of reading around Buddhist practice and Buddhist mind. And I don't share that too widely, not because I don't want to, but when you start talking about that, people often then think, okay, mindfulness, so it's Buddhism, so it's religious. And that would be a shame, because if people don't come to think there's a conflict with their religion, if they're Christian or Hindu or whatever it might be, that would be a real shame, because yes, mindfulness originated in Buddhism, but even within Buddhism, you can practice mindfulness as a Buddhist practice and still not a religious practice.
Yeah.
It's not, but it is the Buddhist teachings around mindfulness, and there's a lot to learn. So mindfulness is only one teaching of 8, and there's a lot of other things to learn there. So it's really, I do follow Buddhism, but I follow it more as an applied philosophy or psychology. I think the other thing to perhaps touch on with spiritual is, and what's nice nowadays actually, is we're seeing the word spiritual. It doesn't have to be spiritual and religious. Spiritual can be seen in all sorts of ways, and we can interpret the word spiritual in our own way. And I think very much if you have close family and friends, and I don't know, your son or daughter comes home from school and you give them a hug, well, why is that not a spiritual moment? So
Yeah.
Spiritual for me isn't just otherworldly. I think you can have this spirit, a sense of spirit and spiritual in yourself and in your family and in your home.
Well, that points to that emotional well-being piece, doesn't it? And talking about actually making sure that we, as humans, we're nourished emotionally, and that's something we should talk about on apparently one of the world's top comedy philosophy podcasts. It's the only one, as far as we know.
Okay, moving past your saltiness. So, what is one of the biggest misunderstandings about the practice of mindfulness?
Right, so this, I'm going to throw you a curveball now. So, I'll give 2. So the most common one, although I think this is dropping away a bit now, is the idea that it's clearing the mind and emptying the mind. So I think pretty much it's been put out widely that actually it's not about clearing the mind, stopping thought. It's more stepping back and noticing that actually during a practice the mind will still come along, still want to hijack your practice and think about what you did yesterday and your shopping list and your things to do list and all the rest of it. And that's just what minds do. And it's great that minds do that, because it's very useful often, that thinking. So sit back and notice it. So I think that misunderstanding has been already discredited. The curveball I'd like to put to you is more the recent understanding, if you like, has been very much, it's all about present moment awareness. So if you just put your mind in the present moment, then all will be well, and that's it. And while that is an integral part of the training, so yes, when we are practicing mindfulness, we focus on the body and focus on the breath, because it's only in the body and in the breath that you can be aware. You can't be aware of taking a breath yesterday or taking a breath tomorrow. So that is the training, to very much bring the mind to the present moment, because then that will increase awareness, and you can look at the choices you're making in the moment and in your life, and that will change your decisions and change your life. So present moment awareness is very important, but it is quite a simplistic way of seeing the process or the method. So what I mean by that is it would be perfectly possible to have your mind in the present moment and be completely unmindful. So if you're with a group of people and you're sitting there and looking at the people, and internally you're running a gossip about, oh my goodness, I can't believe he's wearing that, and I can't believe she's got that haircut, gossip and criticisms going on, that's not really a mindful mind. It may be present moment, but it's not particularly serving you or serving anyone else. On the other hand, you might be casting your mind back to a time you spent recently, or holiday, or with a friend, and you're fully aware that's what you're doing, and you're absolutely mindful.
Yeah.
So you can be mindful in the past and in the future. It's not just to say put your mind in the present moment and everything's blissful, is a bit simple. I think
Yeah.
certainly one that's working with physical pain. The present moment can be very difficult. So the mindful thing there might be at times to distract yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mindful decision is to put the mind somewhere else. So yeah, maybe that's my curveball of the day, that it's not just present moment awareness.
And one thing I was going to check, because I mean, Charlotte, so I don't practice mindfulness on a regular basis. Do you?
No, I did, but I don't.
Yeah, and actually, when you did your mindfulness practice before the interview, it took us a bit of time to stop sniggering to ourselves, and I'm really sorry about doing
You were trying to
that.
mess with the software with your eyes closed.
Well, I shouldn't play around the podcast software with my eyes closed. But like, how much practice does it take to really get into? Because I'd imagine that we're not alone in terms of not really getting into it on their first attempt or after you haven't done it for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And the important message there is, well, it is noticing that, really, noticing how, and this happens on every course I lead, whether it be online or face-to-face, notice how there's immediately this sense of, okay, how much do I need to do in order to progress? What are the stages of this? When will I reach a certain stage of concentration or focus, or being able to manage my stress levels and what have you? So the first thing to say is to really notice that goal setting and that progress recording mind. And actually mindfulness is genuinely letting go of that. So first of all, let go of any sense of, right, okay, once I practice for this amount of time, this frequently, then I'm going to find this, and this. Because what I've found over 11 years of practice, and I listen to people that practice for 50 years, and it's still the same thing. It's not so much about reaching some complete Zen state. I mean, yes, it might be if you're a Buddhist monk and practicing for 10 hours a day, that might be a different thing. But for the rest of us, it's not, I'm going to really practice so much that I can absolutely have my mind 100% focused all the time.
Yeah.
It's not really that. So it's more about, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in and do this when suits me, little and often, and then see what comes from it. So yes, it is good to have a discipline around it and to intend to do it daily, because probably being too ad hoc, which you may not practice at all, and there is certainly benefit from having a regular practice. But if you set up and say, okay, I'm going to practice for 10 minutes every day, and you get 10 days in and realise you've done it once, then perhaps you need to change that. Perhaps you need to go down to a shorter practice, or perhaps you do need to think about, well, okay, what is going on in my life that I can't find 10 minutes a day, and look at what message is there.
Yeah.
John Kabat-Zinn, who began a section of mindfulness in the States, has this expression, not practicing is practicing. So when you're not finding time to practice, there's a message there. What's going on?
Why is it? Yeah. Can you do me a favour as well, Adrian? When you launch your mindfulness for dogs course, can you let me know? Because it'll be, I'm sure Dexter, our little pooch.
Okay, so where can people find out more about you?
Okay, so my website is at www.nimisa.co.uk. So that's Nimisa, and Nimisa means mindfulness when it was originally founded, if you like. It was written down in an Indian language called the Sanskrit language. So Nimisa means in the blink of an eye. So the idea is that it actually, with training, in the blink of an eye, you can catch your train of thoughts and redirect them. So yeah, check me out on Nimisa, and if you'd like to know more, just pop me a little email or message.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us today, and stick around because you definitely don't want to miss Charlotte's joke at the end, because apparently this one is the worst one we've had for the last few weeks. So we look forward to hearing that. few things we want to do the question of the podcast, which is, what is your favourite emoji or GIF? And we've had a wide range of answers, so I want to talk about some of them. While he gets his answers up, 2 seconds. Hi to Sean, who's watching. Hi to Tracy. Hi to Andrew. I don't know actually, but we've got a few people showing up. Hi to Jess. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it, and I'm glad that Adrian was on, because certainly that conversation around mindfulness. I think it's so easy sometimes to just stay active and stay present, and being kind to yourself is a fundamentally important thing to do. What's your favourite GIF and emoji? We've got some amazing answers here. Stuart Windup has given us a really good one, which is an artist with a paintbrush. And one of the things, I'm reading the book at the minute. Can you pass me that book? Take the gin off and then pass me the book. I'm reading a book at the minute called, I don't know if you've read it, Adrian, it's called Flow by Mihaly. Can you pronounce that surname? No.
I believe it's Csikszentmihalyi.
Yes, thank you for bailing me out there. And certainly, interestingly, it talks about getting in that flow state that mindfulness can help you get into, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the state that a lot of artists and athletes and musicians find themselves in quite naturally when they have a very high level of concentration, and mindfulness can help that.
Now, in the book, he talks about other ways you can do it, like reading and thinking and writing, and there's a bunch of ways you get into that flow state, which apparently contributes to our happiness. But I am finding, especially particularly during lockdown, art. And I mean, I can't be doing them any good, but I'm enjoying the cathartic process of drawing and colouring in. I sound like a 5-year-old when I say colouring in, but certainly art is quite a cathartic process. So I like the art emoji at the minute. Andrew Berwick at the minute just said at the minute it's that. He's clearly going through a stressful time. Louise McNamee has given us a GIF of Boss Baby reading the menu and then falling asleep.
I think it's a file.
Which is a good one. And John Cook has gone old school with a GIF of Mike reading EastEnders naked apart from a bow tie. I don't know who he's sending that to, but it'll be interesting. Catherine Knowles has just got one with the slogan Fabuloso and somebody's throwing glitter. And Tracy Daves has gone for hello, how are you? Everything all right? Like to hear from you. Love to see you soon. And obviously, I miss you. And then on Twitter, we've got some really nice ones. I think Ian at Money Alive has misunderstood the question, because it wasn't what's your favourite emoji or GIF. He's answered GIF. GIFs are better than emojis, clearly.
Wait, that might just be Twitter saying he's...
No. And then Laura Janes, on our final answer to the question of the podcast, said Twitter has unleashed a new emoji. And I didn't know about this. And it's an emoji that allows us to express gratitude to our frontline workers. So now...
There's a new emoji on the Facebook Live as well.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, look, this little one with that's hugging the
love one.
Right here.
Yeah. So there is now a gratitude emoji that may become my favourite emoji now. So did you know about the gratitude emoji, Adrian?
No, I'll be on that straight away. That's yeah.
Yeah, it's good. So thanks for Laura for sharing that. Would you like to finish us off with this amazing joke? Now, I don't know if you've got time to get your laughing boots on, Adrian, but I wouldn't bother because they're not normally that great. But Charlotte's gonna give it a go. Are you ready to be whelmed?
Ready.
underworld. Anyway, why was the maths book sad?
Don't know. Why was the maths book sad?
Because it had so many problems.
I think that's great.
Thank you for our listeners for enjoying that particular joke. Thank you, Charlotte, for continuing to deliver. Decreasingly. No. Listen, have a lovely Friday. Thanks for joining us again on the Kindness Project.
We're back Sunday?
I don't know when we're back. We'll post it online when we're back. But we've got some live shows next week, and we'll let you know when those are going to be. But in the meantime, have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Adrian, again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.